Hello, I'm Ed Parrott. Welcome to my weekly real estate market report. We've got a lot going on this week, so let's get into it. There's been a shift toward buying new construction in recent months, and that's primarily because the inventory of existing homes is so extremely low. Sales of new homes were down 8.7% last month, and that gives us an annual rate of 675,000 homes. And this has certainly put pressure on builders' confidence. Last week I reported it had dipped below 50, which is officially bearish territory. Even with the builders offering rate buy downs and other incentives, the high interest rates are just putting too much damper on demand, both for existing homes and now even for new homes. And even looking at existing home sales, the situation there is deteriorating a little bit. Last week I was expecting annual sales of 4.0 million units for this year. Now it's looking like it could be as low as 3.7 million or maybe claw its way up to 3.9 million. But in any case, home sales or existing home sales are not in a good position right now. And I don't know if we would call this good news or not. I guess it's good news if you're a seller, but the prices on homes does continue to increase. The Case-Shiller Home Price Index has gone up 6.7% month over month. And although we had a drop in prices during the second quarter of last year, that has been entirely erased. In fact, it was erased like 2 months ago. And so now we're back up above that level. And if we take a look at the Case-Shiller Price Index, you can see the continuing increase in prices. Now, as I discussed last week, prices are facing some pressure. The initial listing price is continuing to go up about 0.4% a month as of last month. However, it's also very common now to see a price reduction, or what they're calling a price improvement these days. And the other thing that I mentioned last week is we're seeing a lot of open houses. So even with existing homes, there is getting to be a little bit more pressure on the sellers. Make no mistake, it's still a seller's market right now because of the very low inventory. But it is starting to move the other direction just a little bit. And on the subject of price increases, 10 out of the 20 largest cities are now setting at record highs for their home prices. The West Coast, which had been under pressure in recent months, is rebounding quickly. So although it's still down considerably for some of the larger cities in the West, like Phoenix, Las Vegas, LA, as you move to the east, it gets better, and by the time you hit Houston, it's pretty well on an even keel to last year, and continue moving east, and Cleveland, Miami, places like that are showing, even New York City is showing an increase over last year. Now, one thing I'd like to say here, some of you may have noticed that I rely heavily on the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, they're about the most accurate out there. They're showing a 0.6% increase month over month right now. The FHFA, or the Federal Housing Finance Authority, is showing 0.8% on theirs. And there are other indexes, certain things starting with a Z, which we won't mention. I will let it drop there. But Case-Shiller looks at historical data on the same properties, and some of these other indexes have a mix of properties in there, from top quality properties to mid-range to low end. So with the mix of properties, they're not really looking at equivalent transactions, and I like Case-Shiller because they do track individual homes. So if a home sells for $300,000 in say 2017, and then in 2022 sells for $410,000, they're tracking that individual home every time it sells. So I think they have the most accurate appreciation data out there. One area that's been especially hard hit is the commercial office space rental sector. And they're now standing at a 13.3% vacancy rate, which is extremely high. And they're facing some pressures. There continues, and I'm no expert in office space, so I don't understand this, but they continue developing new office space even with this high vacancy rate. And a lot of people have gotten used to working from home, and there is reluctance to move back into the office. Although a lot of companies are saying, hey, you got to come into the office at least 1 or 2 days a week. And the other thing is that some of these large landlords are going to be facing refinancing coming up here in the near term. So they're going to be under pressure. It will be interesting to see what happens there. But as I say, I don't really follow that market too much because it's not something that I actively deal in. If I could, let's take another look at pending home sales, as that is an area that is continuing to deteriorate. The pending home sales index is now standing at 71.8, which, to give you some context for that, in the 2001 time frame, the index was at 100. And annual sales during that time were about 5.5 million homes per year. And at 71.8, we're looking, as I say, right now we're predicting 3.7 to 3.9 million homes sold this year. So it is a major drop, and certainly well below the 6.5 million that we sold a few years ago. I'd have to look at the data to remember which year. But that leads me into a discussion I wanted to have on renters. And if you're a renter considering buying, there's some things you need to think about. A lot of folks are wanting to wait until interest rates come down, and I can certainly understand that thinking. However, you've got to look at other factors. If you had purchased a home at the beginning of 2022, the median price was right around $400,000. And at this point, that same home would now be $445,000. So in that time frame, you would have gained $45,000 in equity just from appreciation of the home. You would have gained some equity from your payments that you made on the home, and you would have had the benefit of deducting the interest from your federal income tax. So those are some benefits to going ahead and buying now. And you say, but the dadgum price on the mortgage rate is just so high, I can't afford it. Well, it is high and the payments are high, but I believe long-term interest rates are going to settle back down to probably somewhere in the 4.5 to 5% range. I don't think they're going to get back to the 3.5% range they were about 3 or 4 years ago, but 4.5 to 5%, I could see that happening after we get rid of Jerome Powell. But he's going to be there till 2026, so it'll be a while. But when the interest rates do come down, you could refinance at that point and save some more money. In the meantime, another thing that many people do, and I recommend it highly, just for round numbers, let's say your payment is $3,000 a month. If you will make a payment of $1,500 on the first of the month and another payment of $1,500 on the 15th, you will cut down the amount of interest you pay each month. And every month you do that, you get a little reduction in your interest and a little more increase on your equity that you build up. So that's certainly a very smart thing to do. So there are things you can do to help your situation along. Now, let's look at the cost of waiting. You could have bought the home in 2022 for $400,000. Now it's going to be $445,000, so that's $45,000 that is going to cost you. Your down payment is going to be higher. You can still do a 10% down payment. There are a lot of programs out there for that. So $40,000 would have been your down payment. $45,000 is your down payment now. So you're paying more for your down payment. You've paid rent all that time, 18 months, that you could have been owning and building up your own equity instead of paying the landlord's equity. And the other thing about it is the price of rent has gone up. You know, prices of rent have gone right up with the cost of homes, but most of the landlords have had their rental properties for several years. Now I'm talking about single family homes here. I don't really get into the rental market for apartment complexes. But the price of the homes have gone up. The landlords have been raising the price of rent. So, you're not paying very much less in rent than you would be in your own mortgage payment. So those are more reasons to go ahead and get your home now instead of waiting. However, there are other folks that worry, well, if I buy something now, then the market may crash and I'm going to lose a lot of money. And there are some gloom and doom people out there that are saying, oh, it's going to crash. I saw one report, and I don't know if this was actually attributable to Warren Buffett or not, but the report said Warren Buffett says we're not going to make it to 2025 and the earth is going to end just any day. Well, there's always alarmists out there that are saying it's a disaster right around the corner. Well, if the entire economy collapses, then yeah, it could certainly collapse the housing market. But if the entire economy collapses, we're all going to be living under a bridge. But to take a look at the real world example that I want to discuss, I have a very good friend that lives down in Jupiter, Florida. He bought his home in 2006 before the crash, kind of at the top of the market. He paid $720,000 for it. In 2008, when we had what most people call a crash, and it was certainly a major contraction of the market. I'm not trying to diminish it in any means, but after the crash, his home was then worth $500,000. And a lot of people would have panicked over that and just don't know what to do. Well, the thing to do is keep paying your mortgage, stay right where you're at, times will get better. And they did get better. As a matter of fact, he's still in that same home today, and it is now worth $1.3 million. So let's say we have another crash, which I don't think we're going to have a crash. We may have a contraction. But let's say we have a crash. So now his home might be worth $900,000. Well, that's still more than the $720,000 he paid for it. And all he's got to do is stay there a few more years, and it'll be right back where it was. So the doom and gloom folks, they just don't hold any water with me. So my point that I'm making is that the housing market follows inflation in general. In 1970, I paid 50 cents for a gallon of milk. Last night, I paid $5.20 for a gallon of milk. So everything goes up. Inflation is not going away. The hope is to control it and keep it around 2%. But 20 years from now, I assure you, prices will be higher. And if I'm still alive and kicking in 20 years, which I could be, then I'm going to look back and say, dadgummit, I remember back there in 2023, I only had to pay $5.20 for a gallon of milk. So, pardon my hillbilly coming out there, but that was just the way I felt about it. So just hang in there. It will be okay in the long run, I believe. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Let's take a look at my report from last week for just a second. In addition to the effect on the stock market, this also put pressure on the yields on bonds, pushing them higher. And as a result, mortgage rates went higher as well. A couple of weeks ago, we had a recent high of 7.49% on the mortgage rate. And after this announcement, it popped up to 7.47%, almost back up to the recent high. I would not be surprised to see it go above 7.5 next week. So I was all too accurate on my prediction. The mortgage rate hit a 23-year high last Wednesday of 7.65%. That's approximately 0.8% higher than it was a year ago, and higher than the 7.49 20-year high we hit about a month ago. And with the Fed and other central banks stating that they believe they're going to have to maintain interest rates higher for longer, although I will say the European Central Bank on their last rate, I think it was to their marginal rate of 4.0%, I believe is what they had it set at. But in any case, they explicitly stated that would be their last increase. They felt that they had reached the point where if they just maintain that for a period of time, that they will get inflation under control. Whereas the Fed has all but announced they will be raising interest rates another 25 basis points before the end of the year. Jerome Powell has said that we need to maintain the interest rates at this level for a long period of time. And one thing that concerns me is early last week, Minneapolis Fed President Kashkari announced that he felt like interest rates may have to go significantly higher to, quote, meaningfully control inflation. So although there are some moderate voices in the Fed, the Cleveland president and the Atlanta president come to mind, there are too many hawks still in there as well, I'm afraid. To actually quote the man, he says, "Two sectors of the economy that are traditionally the most sensitive to interest rate hikes, autos and housing, have both added some signs of bottoming and in some cases are starting to show some recovery that makes me cautious that we might not be as restrictive as we otherwise would think." Now, I don't know what in the world recovery he's talking about, but with home sales at a level of 3.7 million per year, that ain't a recovery. I don't know about the auto industry, but the housing industry certainly is not in a, quote, recovery. So I think he needs to take another look at his thinking. So that's all I've got for this week, as if that wasn't enough. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the program. If you got some good information out of it, then if you would, please subscribe to the channel and like this program. And I hope you have a great week.